Okay, and we are live. Welcome to a new episode of All Things Xbox Podcast. Once again, I got Logan with me. Logan, how you doing this week?
I'm doing great. Life's pretty good over here. My team is one win away
Nice.
from the finals, and the gaming news has been great. And just overall, life is pretty good over here. How about you, man?
Yeah, pretty good. We have a bunch of cool gaming topics to talk about. In fact, as we were saying in the pre-show, pretty much everything this week is all positive outside of the marathon stuff, which we'll be talking about later. But yeah, it's been a good week. The weather here, it's getting awful. It's hot. If you live in Britain and it's hot, it's awful. we like it cold and miserable all the time, but the hay fever, it's not doing me any favors. Absolutely brutal. And what can I say? Oh, before we get into all the gaming topics and what we've been playing, as I've been saying since January, I've been watching the wrestling. First time in 20 years getting back into it, and oh my god! So I have to have a rant about this, and I don't know how television works in the US, but you'll have to let me know. So they have this kind of mini pay-per-view style event every few months called Saturday Night Main Event. It's on some TV channel in the US, and in the UK it's on YouTube. Really cool. So I'm watching this show, and it's a 2 hour broadcast, and I'm not even kidding. 40 minutes of the whole show were ads. 40 minutes of 2 hours was dedicated to ads. And this wasn't just in between matches, this was during matches. So there was a cage match, and in the entire time I've been watching this year, there's now been two cage matches, and half of the cage match was taken up by adverts. Absolutely egregious. Like, Logan, is the ad situation really that bad on live television in the US?
Oh, it is egregiously bad. Like, especially for sporting events. Like, man, I could have a whole hour podcast on just this annoyance of mine. Like, the ad situation is crazy. There's like mandatory media timeouts during certain sporting events. Like, take the NBA for example, which I'm diehard for. Like, there are mandatory timeouts throughout the quarters and the halves, and then they pump in all these ads, and then like anytime there's a significant review or whatever, they're like, okay, let's go to commercial or this, and then it adds even more ads, and then they don't even start the things on time. They start like 10 or 15 minutes after they're supposed to. Like, if they say tip off is supposed to be 7, it's really going to start at 7:10 or 7:15. And guess what? Ads fill that 10 to 15 minute. Yeah,
Wow.
it is ridiculous over here. It's not criminal, but it just feels awful and makes me really mad.
Yeah, it shouldn't be criminal because I was shocked, man. And like for people joining the show, greatly appreciated. We'll get into game in a minute, but I need to rant about this because people complain about ads on the dashboard and like on PC and whatever and consoles.
Oh, they're nothing
Like
compared to
absolutely
TV
nothing.
ads.
Like I was actually shocked during matches. So there was a match. I believe it was the first match of the night. Sorry, it was the second match of the night. The match was shorter than the ad break, right? And I couldn't believe it. Like they had ads during matches, and for television in the UK, you don't have ads during sporting events other than the halftime show.
Oh, you're lucky, man.
So like if you watch like a 90-minute football match, there'll be ads during the halftime show, but that's it. And regular TV, you have one ad break every 15 minutes, and the ad break's maybe 2 minutes long in the UK. But it was awful. Like I'm trying to enjoy some wrestling and more bloody ads, and the advertising this thing called Dude Wipes. Now I had to pause for a second. I'm like, what the hell is a dude wipe? And I'm not going to search for this thing on Google because I don't know what I'll see. But yeah, basically wet wipes, but for dudes. And I just thought like it's horrendous. The advertising on WWE at the minute is just it's terrible. So if people ever get wound up about ads on consoles, you've seen nothing. Oh my god! So like you were saying, Logan, basketball ads are pretty bad. My god, like I'm guessing it's even worse during American football, where there's like tens of millions of people watching. But I don't know what they're thinking. Dude wipes.
It's a national epidemic in the US for sporting events. And it's hilarious is like every year people whine and complain and say we are tired of these games taking so bloody long to finish. And then they introduce goofy rules to try to tweak or speed up games or do this or this. But then they pump in more commercial time during it, so the shortened game is offset by more ads. So in the end, everybody loses.
Yeah, I had to mention it because like the ads are everywhere. Like there's a Prime stand next to the commentators table. It's like okay, you have Logan Paul there advertising Prime. I get it, and then you have Doom the Dark Ages plastered in the middle of the ring. That isn't as egregious, but I can't get over seeing this dude wipes thing. Like speechless. And yes, I was technically watching a show about sweaty dudes grappling each other. Say what you will, but I was wanting to watch it.
When you put it that
Yeah,
way.
I mean that's what wrestling is at the end of the day. But I was so angry at cage match back when I used to watch cage matches like wrestling when like 20 years ago. There was cage matches all the time, and oh my god, bit of a rant. Sorry, but I had to mention it because the ad situation was terrible. And the thing is, I'm going to be a hypocrite. I'm going to watch the next show that has these ads, and I'm going to complain just as much then. But prepare yourselves for it because it'll probably be worse. Anyway, it's been a good week for gaming. Logan, what have you been playing?
Well, I've been playing a mix of several different things. I just finished Crime Scene Cleaner and wrapped up the campaign. It's a total blast. Love it. Highly recommend it. With the caveat that it covers some topics and has some imagery and some stuff in it that will be disturbing for some. So just know that going into it. But it's so weird to make this comparison, but it is like Breaking Bad mixed with Power Wash Sim. Like
Nice.
you're working for this syndicate or this crime boss guy named Big Jim, and you have to clean up all his messes and all the stuff he pulls, and it gets crazier and crazier as it goes. And then so I finished that, and then I've been on Expedition 33. I'm in Act 2 firmly now. Act 1, yeah, that whoo. Um Act 2 is
Yeah.
off to a fantastic start. Absolutely loving it. Like, honestly, I think Expedition 33 probably has an ironclad death grip on Game of the Year for me.
Yeah.
It would take something like astronomical to happen for it not to be my Game of the Year. And been playing that, Oblivion Remake, and I tried a game called Risk of Rain 2 the other day, and I actually enjoyed it. It's a roguelike that has kind of this art palette that resembles the Pathless.
Oh yeah.
You know that game where you're the archer and then you have the spirit eagle?
Yeah.
It the art style is like that, but it's like a roguelike boss rush thing. So those have been the ones I have mainly played recently. How about you? What have you been up to?
I've been playing all sorts. So like Expedition 33. I won't spoil. Well, we both won't spoil anything with the story, but I'm about halfway ish through Act 2. Fantastic game. I'm getting my ass handed to me at every 5 minutes because like I love turn-based combat. I'm just terrible at it. So I just keep
Have you
pushing.
mastered parrying yet?
Yeah, thankfully yes. Right. So there's only ever been two games where I'm good at parrying, and that's the first Dark Souls game and this. Uh, and I think the way they do parrying in this game is very satisfying. I will say this: the telegraphing from some of the enemies, like they're winding up to hit you, and then looks like they're gonna hit you, and then they don't. But outside of that, combat's fantastic. It pretty much has a lock in for Game of the Year. For me, at the minute, that could change. But uh, again, won't spoil story element. But Logan, you have to admit the ending of Act 1 was a bit intense.
Yeah, I start hearing this music and then I see a look in a character's eyes and I'm like, oh boy, I know where this is going. And then, sure enough, it did.
Yeah.
And obviously not spoiler, won't go into it, but there were shades of Final Fantasy VII in Act One,
Yeah.
and um And even like I noticed like another Final Fantasy reference is like you loved Final Fantasy X as well.
Oh yeah,
Um, you remember the sound the song or score for Xanarkin, like Return to Xanarkin or something. It
yeah,
was
yeah,
like the main menu music. Like if you hadn't loaded the game yet, and it has a cutscene and it plays this beautiful piano and string music. There's like a certain um song I just heard in this section in Act Two, and I just was sitting there and listening, and I'm like, man, this feels like Final Fantasy X. Like this sound is so familiar but different, and it just this game, pun intended, is hitting all the notes, and I just love it so much.
yeah. The Final Fantasy X thing I can see. I'm like one of the people that like Final Fantasy VII, which we're obviously going to be talking about later. Like Final Fantasy VII has this like huge built-in fan base, and millions of people love it. I love the original. But there's something about Final Fantasy X I just absolutely adore. There's something about the early 2000s where they were obsessed with setting games on tropical beaches. I don't know.
Yeah, that was a thing.
Yeah, like I don't.
Mario Sunshine.
Basically, I like every game between like what 2001 2003. It's like, oh, we have this new game. It has to be set on a tropical beach, but it just works. But yeah, so going through Expedition 33. Uh, I'm loving it. I mean, what can I say? The developers knocked it out of the park, and they have this really interesting story. We mentioned it last week, but I'll go over quickly. Like the scores by someone that used to upload music to SoundCloud. The story was written by someone that auditioned to be a voice actor, and it's the studio's first game. I love to see it, and they've reached 3.3 million in sales, which is great because
Perfect number.
yeah, great numbers. In 33 days, which is lovely. But I mean, my God, they've had so much success. Like the movie rights were bought back in January, so like people in the know that this game was going to be a good game. And if people haven't played it yet, don't know why you aren't, because it's also in Game Pass Ultimate. Download it, play it. And I will say this: I complain on a weekly basis about the state of AAA games, and even though this is a AA game, and we talk about this a lot, like the AAA space can learn a lot from this game. You know, you can bring back overworlds in RPGs. You can have turn-based combat. You don't have to have a game that costs $200 million to look, play, and sound good. And they did a fantastic job. Now they haven't talked about DLC, but you have a game this successful as a brand new IP, they can pretty much do anything. They could do a game set with the first expedition. Anything they want. But hey, loving the game. I've also been playing Avowed. Avowed's funny because it was poised as this 80-hour RPG, and I've been playing it for 3 months on and off because that's what I do with RPGs. But like by the time I'm done, I'm probably gonna put maybe 80 hours into it. I love to obsess with getting through like side quests and RPGs. So I'm having fun with that. I've also been playing this other game called Outcast: A New Beginning. I see people being very intrigued when I've been posting videos of this because it's also a AA game. It launched around this time last year, and it's a third-person action adventure game where you have a jetpack and a laser pistol. There's footage on screen at the minute for people watching on YouTube, and it's just fun. It does suffer this thing that some AA games have, where it has that tiny little bit of jank to it, but like
Hmm.
this game, I don't really care honestly if a AA game has a tiny little bit of jank. I really don't care. We put up with all that through even AAA games back during the seventh generation, so it's not really it doesn't really bother me. The story is basically if you took Avatar and mixed it with John Carter. Um, so like I think if people like those intellectual properties, they'll like this. It's fun. You've got a laser shield. The jetpack's fun, and I think 6 hours in or something. It's fun. I think people have fun with it. It's always on sale. Um, it's one of those games where it had an original game that came out like 20 years ago, and THQ Nordic got Embracer, bought the IP, and then they made a sequel. They've done this several times now, and it's a fun game. I don't think it was a success at all because it came out in a busy period, but hey, people want to check it out. I'm always posting clips on Twitter, and it's on sale fairly often as well. And what else have I been playing? Oh yeah, I have actually been playing Final Fantasy VII, the original. I think that's one of the things I like about having backwards compatibility and collections of older games and ports of old games. That just for a simple slice of nostalgia, I'll fire up like a 20-year-old game. Um, and my God, that original that came out in the '90s, it's still bloody good. You know,
Hmm.
yes, Cloud has hands that are made of triangles, right? You have basically 10 polygons per character, but it has so much charm to it. And, we talk about this fairly often, but like maybe once every few months, you'll have this horror game come out on Xbox where it's basically PlayStation 1 graphics. Uh, and I think that generation of games has so much charm to it. Um, and if you look at the reviews of those like old new games that come out, all the reviews are basically positive. Like people want more stylized games like this because I think a lot of people here they've played many games where you play like an indie game that's 16-bit, right? Fun game. It's a timeless art style, but I would love to see more PlayStation 1 N64 style graphics in video games by indie developers. But yeah, so that's what I've been playing. Crow Country, I see that in chat, and there's a bunch of other games.
Brilliant game.
Yeah, what's that other game? It's a sci-fi game. It's a bit like Resident Evil. It's called Singularity or something.
Um, Trying to remember.
I'll try and figure the name out. But there's a sci-fi game on Xbox at the minute. It's basically an old style Resident Evil game, and it's sci-fi. It's super cool. If I can remember the name of it, I'll put it in chat. But anyway, let's get into all the big topics because we have, let's see, about 16 topics. We'll try and get through as many as possible. It's going to be a fun one. Now, this one I wasn't going to include in the show because it's not really Microsoft, but who knows what will happen in the future. So, Apple acquires their very first game developer. Now, they've been air quote trying to be serious with gaming for a very long time. They tried it back in the 90s with the Pippin. That was a colossal failure. They tried putting Game Center on all their devices back in 2010. I liked Game Center because it's how you got achievements on iPhone games, and then they kind of just did away with it without telling anyone. I actually liked Game Center, um, and they always saying that we are heavily interested in being serious about gaming, but they've never really done it. And I thought they were going to go all in with gaming when they released their 4K Apple TV box. And because if you have that, you can play Call of Duty Mobile and a bunch of other games on it perfectly fine. You can hook up basically any controller to those things now. So anyway, they've bought the first game developer. Nobody knows what the terms are, but they're also going to include a brand new gaming app on iPhone, iMac, Apple TV set-top box, and iPad, where basically they're bringing back achievements. There's going to be a chat system, so they're kind of going to do what the Xbox app does on your mobile, but for Apple games. Now, I don't think this is going to be a threat to Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo really any time ever. But I think it's really interesting that, Apple, one of the biggest corporations on the planet, they kind of doing these like baby steps for gaming. They have the Apple Arcade, which is, I think it's $6.99 a month. And that's the only way you can play a lot of those games by paying for the subscription. And, like Apple, they have all their devices out in the wild. They have entertainment out with their TV streaming app. Where, by the way, if you like sci-fi television, Apple, Apple make a lot of sci-fi, and it's really good stuff. And I think video games is actually the next sector which they'll attack next. What will happen in the future? Who knows? But I figured that if you have this little tiny set-top box, I think it's like $140 or something for the fake 4K Apple box. Like, video games make a lot of sense. They have the Apple Vision Pro, which is basically a VR headset, but there isn't really many gaming apps on it, or AAA gaming apps. It's a weird one, but we'll see what happens. Like, Logan, do you think Apple will ever actually take a big step into gaming?
I think it's one of the next frontiers for them. Apple has been an incredibly successful company, obviously. Like most of the things they touch turns to gold. There are some things that don't. but for the most part, they're very, very good at what they do. You mentioned Apple Plus. It's like phenomenal streaming
Yeah,
service. Like all these darling shows, like sci-fi especially, and then like critically acclaimed stuff, movies, shows, series. Like they have all these other things figured out. Like they pioneered the digital music front and storefronts and all this other stuff. So gaming is like the last big frontier for them. It seems unwise to bet against Apple, but the fact that gaming is such a different beast to tackle because you saw with Google and
yeah,
Amazon, these other companies, like just because you're a brilliant company that has tremendous success doesn't mean you can just walk in there, drop a few billion and get success. It gaming is a lot more complicated than that. So I don't know. I'm wait and see mode,
yeah,
but I definitely think Apple has a better shot at it than a Google or Amazon does.
yeah. I mean, like you said, they have nailed television and movies. Um, for people who haven't watched it yet, there's a film that came out I think in January called The Gorge. Fantastic film, fantastic sci-fi film. It's basically the best Resident Evil film, but I won't spoil it. But yeah, Apple, this is going to be another mountain for them to climb. Will they do it? Who knows? But hey, I think more competition's always good. Anyway, we'll move on. You know what? We'll talk about this because this is actually a big topic and nobody's talking about it. So, Assassin's Creed Shadows launched a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, or something. And as far as I know, it's having some success. I mean, the game's gorgeous. It's still in my backlog, which I need to get to at some point. I think the game looks phenomenal, but it had the same thing before launch that people wanted that Assassin's Creed Mirage had, and that is the parkour system didn't have side ejects and wall ejects and backwards ejects, right? Which is basic parkour movement we used to have in the oldest Assassin's Creed games. 2, 3, Brotherhood, all that stuff. And when Mirage came out a couple of years ago, it was missing this key feature. And they said that this game and the way the city's designed, you don't really need back ejects. And then, people were kind of okay with it. We got past it because it's typically not the kind of feature you would see a developer add later because, the whole game is built around parkour. So, like, why would you, like, how could you physically put in a movement mechanic where the game was apparently not designed for it? So about 2 months after launch or 3 months after launch with Mirage, they put out a new update which allowed back ejects and wall ejects. And the gameplay is amazing. And, I think Assassin's Creed Mirage is a fantastic game. Great gameplay, short story. And, they did the same with Shadows today. They've added back ejects and wall ejects to Assassin's Creed Shadows, and it completely changes the movement system. And, you know, I saw a lot of comments of people saying, oh, why did they launch a game when finished? And honestly, I think that Ubisoft was really wanting to move Assassin's Creed from a parkour game to have it focus more on the story and the action. But like the fan base, we've been here for a long time. We want proper parkour in these games. Just give us all the features day one, and hopefully, after 2 games in a row now, they'll take in the feedback and launch games with those features. Because if you've been playing Assassin's Creed since 2007, these are simple features, you know? Like parkour over time should be getting better, not worse. But hey, it's good that they've added it. Can't wait to play it. Logan, did you get the Shadows, and what do you think about them putting in this parkour feature which people have been wanting?
I haven't gotten the shadows yet, but I'm happy they added the feature. The more features available as options for people, the better. And like as someone who's played Assassin's Creed since the original one, like parkour is such a key element and strafing all that. So being able to make it to where people can do parkour in the best way possible for their game style is good and I'm happy about it.
Yeah. I mean, like, I've never, and maybe people can call me an Assassin's Creed fan, but or fanboy or whatever. But like, I love Assassin's Creed. I only think there's really been one bad one, and that was Assassin's Creed Unity. You know what? I'll actually
Oh,
take
the
that back. Yeah,
eyes.
like Unity was so buggy. You know, the dude didn't have a face in some cutscenes, but the parkour was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Uh, Assassin's Creed Syndicate, I think that I loved the two main characters. I thought the story was boring. I thought the gameplay loop was boring. In fact,
Agreed.
Syndicate is the only Assassin's Creed game outside of Valhalla, but I stopped playing that for a different reason. I stopped playing Syndicate out of sheer boredom. And you know, I should have been hyped for that. Assassin's Creed set in London, perfect for me.
Even add Jack the Ripper, and it doesn't move it that much.
Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking. And plus, what was the big offender for me? Thankfully, they don't do this anymore. Is that after you finished a quest, you'd get a little pop up after a quest saying how many stars in between 1 and 5 did you like this quest? So basically, they were wanting me to do Q&A for a video game that I bought. Like, no, that's not how it works. You pay for teams to do that before the game comes out, not me while I'm playing it. Um, but yeah, anyway, it's good to see this, feature come to Assassin's Creed Shadows. They're obviously going to improve it over time. They've also put in more photo mode, features and stuff. Which, I mean, what can I say? I love photo mode. I wish more games had them. Anyway, we'll move on. You know what? Let's see. Oh, this will be fun. So this game was announced about 6 months ago, and it looked super cool, but not much has been known about it. People have been kind of like on the, how should I say it, on the fence whether this game was even real or not, and that's MindsEye. So this game, which has been directed by Leslie Benzies, who used to work on Red Dead Redemption and Grand Theft Auto 5, has been making this open world cyberpunk game for several years now. It got shown off about 6 months ago, and the developer, basically once a week, they've been putting out this 3-second gameplay loop on Twitter, and not much else. All the replies are basically, "Hey, can you please show us extended gameplay?" And some previews went out the other day where some people were saying, "Hey, the combat looks a bit stiff" or whatever. I didn't really take much of that in because these people had to watch the preview; they couldn't play it. So you can't really say a game is clunky just by looking at it. Well, anyway, today they came out with a 5-minute gameplay demo. It featured drive and shoot mechanics, drone gameplay, and also the content roadmap. Now, that surprised me because they plan to do way more with this game than I first thought. So, for people that don't know, it's a third-person shooter, open-world game, much like Grand Theft Auto, but it's in the style of a Mafia game, where Mafia, it's basically a linear game set in an open world. They were originally going to do that, and it is that, but from the onset, you can play this game free roam, open world city. There's also going to be like side activities such as races, drone races. I think there's going to be a horde mode, and there's going to be a multiplayer mode coming later this year. That took a lot of people's attention because Grand Theft Auto 5 has had no competition since the day it came out. And this game, even though it's a smaller budget game, it's by a new developer, I loved what I saw. Yeah, it did have a tiny little bit of jank to it, but at the end of the day, I don't really care as long as the story's good and the gameplay is good. So even though I loved what I saw, like Logan, did you see the trailer at all?
I have not. The stuff I've seen about Mind's Eye has been like the clips you've posted over time. I haven't seen the newest stuff.
Excuse me. So yeah, the game looks fun. I think a lot of people will like it. The main actor is basically the same dude from Mafia 3. Very talented actor. Um, I kind of see what they're doing with the gameplay and the advertising because some games now they'll be announced and then you have like months of marketing, then there'll be a gap in marketing, and then maybe a month or two before release they go all out. Maybe there's posters on the sides of buses. Maybe there's ads on YouTube all the time. Or, and I think this is what they're trying to do with Mind's Eye, they show very little to get people intrigued. Because like Grand Theft Auto 6, that's going to be the biggest game ever, but I can't see them doing big gameplay drops right before release. Maybe they'll show off some cool gameplay mechanics with a new trailer, but I think they wanted to tease people with these small trailers and get them interested in the game. And I hope the game does well. I think the third person shooter open world city space it really needs more competition. We can't just have Grand Theft Auto. I think that was one of the best things about the seventh generation is that you had Grand Theft Auto, but you also had the, I'm doing air quotes, GTA clones. You know, you had Mafia 2, you had Mercenaries, you had Saints Row, and then Watch Dogs came out, you know, a bunch of other games. And you don't really have that now. And I think that's sad. Hopefully, this is, you know, it's going to satisfy a lot of people's needs. Now, another cool thing about this game is that there's a whole content creation side of the game which we haven't seen. So on PC, I think just after launch, there's going to be a bunch of tools for people to create modes and certain things to happen in the open world. And I think that stuff will eventually come to console as well. But they clearly have big plans for this game. They just don't have a huge marketing cycle. You know, it is a newer company. I can't see them having GTA money, so they can't, you know, have posters everywhere. But hey, I think the concept looks cool. It's an open world cyberpunk game, which we don't really get many of, you know. Like, we've had Cyberpunk 2077, and we've had, what, Deus Ex Human Revolution and Mankind Divided, and those are very small open world games. But the game looks cool. If people haven't seen it yet, check it out. The trailer came out today. It's about 5 minutes long. I'm craving more third-person shooters. We get next to none now, and I think that's so sad. Anyway, we'll move on. You know, let's see what we've got. Okay,
Speaking of third-person shooter,
yep.
Guess what's coming back? Warhammer, Space Marine.
Yeah, you know what? We'll talk about Warhammer now because it's actually a cool topic, and I think that, you know, Warhammer Space Marine is a funny one because when the sequel was announced, during the Warhammer Space Marine 2 was announced during Jeff Keighley's Game Awards like 3 or 4 years ago or something, right? But 2 months prior, there was a Warhammer showcase on YouTube, about 40 minutes long. They have them every year, and they didn't announce anything related to Space Marine. So all of the chat while the show was live was people saying, "Hey, Space Marine 2, Space Marine 2." And then a lot of people, including myself, were disappointed that once again we got no Space Marine 2. And then when we got to the Game Awards, they showed off a CGI trailer plus 8 seconds of gameplay, right? And a lot of people thought that 8 seconds of gameplay for Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 was completely fake. I'm happy to say that was actual gameplay. And, you know, that game absolutely delivered. It was such a huge success that the studio, Saber Interactive, they've completely changed as a studio. They have to approach games differently in a good way because they didn't see this game being such a huge success. Like, you have, and it's a huge IP, but if you think about it, Warhammer 40k is the nerdiest sci-fi IP ever, right? It dwarfs Star Trek. It dwarfs Star Wars. Like, this is ultra mega nerd IP, right? I mean, during the pandemic, the only store that survived was Games Workshop where I lived, right? People like buying those little models and painting them. And guess what? Games Workshop makes bank off them. Hell, I've even been looking at Warhammer stuff ever since I started playing the games again. But, you know, Space Marine 2, huge success. Space Marine 3 is officially in development. Space Marine 2 is going to get even more content. In fact, the Horde mode, which is called Siege, is coming to Xbox, PlayStation, PC in June. And you're going to be fighting absolutely colossal amounts of waves in co-op. And apparently you can play it solo as well. So that's really cool. But anyway, 3 or 4 days ago, Sega just casually announced that they're coming out with Warhammer 40k Space Marine Remastered. Now, I kind of called this a couple of years ago, but I kind of thought it wouldn't happen just because of the licenses. You know, Sega and Relic own the publishing rights to the first game. I couldn't see there being a remaster to the first game when Focus Entertainment is taking care of the sequel. Like, to me, it seemed like such an outlandish idea, and yeah, I'm a realist. But thankfully, I was proven wrong. And yeah, this remaster looks fantastic. Now, it's coming to Xbox Xbox and PC. I think it's the 10th of June. Yeah, 10th of June. And as someone that played the original on 360, this time last year, I could tell you it's such a huge upgrade. My God, you know, on 360 you had a low frame rate, you had very muddy textures. It was very much a game of its time. It was a lower budget. I'm not even going to call it low budget. It was a it was a game between AA and AAA back in 2010 or 11. It had next to no marketing. But yeah, so this game, it's going to have 4K textures, enhanced character models, enhanced weapons, enhanced enemy models. It has basically 4K textures across the board. The game will be 4K. It's also 60 frames per second. Apparently, they've enhanced the audio as well. It sounds like it's going to be a really good remaster. And out of all the screenshots I've seen, yeah, it looks pretty good. Now, Logan, I know we talked about this game back when the Xbox 360 store closed down because I think you bought that as well, right?
Yeah, I bought it right at the buzzer.
Yeah, so did I. And I mean, it's a fun game on 360, don't get me wrong, but the multiplayer servers were turned off. This remaster is also going to include the multiplayer, which is really cool. But what's your thought on it? Because it literally came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I got several thoughts on this one. Like, first off, I'm just excited it's happening because I remember I had been really wanting it to be backwards compatible. It never got backwards compatible, which I thought was odd because I thought, man, there was such a, it was such a cult hit. So many people liked it and it was well regarded. And then you saw the groundswell of support with the sequel and how big a game it was. So it was like, oh man, surely you guys can work something out for this. But it sounds like they had something even better in mind. They're full on remastering it. And that's awesome. I can't wait to get it day one. It's going to be on Game Pass as well. And yeah, it's super fun how it didn't mention PlayStation and so many people lost their minds. And if it's Xbox that gets missed out on a game for whatever reasons, it's tough luck. Better luck next time or you get what you get. But if PlayStation isn't mentioned or if PlayStation is somehow omitted, you know, it is Apocalypse DEFCON 5, just everyone screaming and freaking out and the whole like exclusives are bad except for this kind of scenario comes out. And I thought it was really illuminating and it was basically Rise of Tomb Raider Redux in the media, and I just thought that was great and comical.
Yeah, the reaction was wild because it's a hard one to talk about because Space Marine when it came out in I think it was 2011 or 2010 when it came out, it had some success. I played it at the time, really enjoyed it. A lot of people played it at the time, and it came out during the time where hey we could have Gears of War clones. Um, but the problem was is that the multiplayer didn't really catch on, even though they came out with map packs and skins and stuff. It came out in a busy period, and it was one of those games that was just stuck on 360, in the seventh gen because we didn't have backwards compatibility for it. And I was actually shocked that we didn't get backwards compatibility for it because a lot of Sega games are. So they clearly looked at the popularity of Space Marine 2, thought, screw it, we'll get this done because it's obviously going to do really well. It's launching in Game Pass Ultimate Day 1 on Xbox and PC. I'll have to double check, but I think the price in the UK was listed as £34. So I'm guessing it's going to be like $39 or $44 or something. But you get all of that content. And, the multiplayer will have crossplay. I don't know if people on PC will have an advantage with how the combat works in that game because it's not really a precise shooter. You're basically firing off blaster bolts half a mile away from enemies. But anyway, I'm sure people have fun with it. But I love the fact that we're still getting remasters for 7th gen games that were stuck on that hardware. I do hope we get the Saboteur at some point. Because
Oh, please, you're preaching to the choir.
yeah,
It's so good.
I bloody love the Saboteur. For people that don't know, it's an open world city game that's basically set in World War II Paris. It's a cross between Assassin's Creed and Grand Theft Auto. and it's a brilliant game. You liberate certain areas, and the whole game's black and white. But when you liberate an area, the color comes back. Such a cool game. But yeah, like I love the fact that 360 games are coming back. Hopefully, we see more. Now, the reaction was weird, as you said, because when the game was announced, I was losing my mind, right? Because I finally saw this thing in action, and I wasn't really looking at the fact that it didn't say PlayStation at the bottom or Switch, but I don't know why it's exclusive, but the fact it is, I mean, whatever. But I will say this, like you said, people were losing the marbles in the replies saying, why is this exclusive to Xbox? By the way, Jeff Keighley did not post about this game at all. Weird.
It's on brand.
Yeah. But like people were looking at, why is this game skipping PlayStation? Well, when a game skips Xbox, and we do see it more often on Xbox, like people don't lose the marbles first. We see no Xbox trending on Twitter, and we're basically told to deal with it, right? And I hate that mentality. Like, I think this game will probably be on PlayStation at some point. It's a Sega game. It's developed, or the original was developed by Relic Entertainment. Unless it's like some weird remnant left over from a marketing deal, I don't know. But we are told to deal with it on a weekly basis. And the truth is, like, if a game's made by a third-party developer, in my opinion, it should be on everything. Right? Put it on a Casio calculator if you can, But anyway, it comes out next month. Yeah, sorry if the audio's going in and out for some reason. Yeah, can people let me know in chat if the audio's fine? For some reason, the mic icon on my screen is keep going red. Like, Logan, can you hear me fine?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. It must just be my end, hopefully. But yeah, please let me know in chat if the audio's fine or not. But either way, it's great to have Space Marine come back, because I never thought in a million years, due to all the weird licensing and how Space Marine 1 is published by Focus Entertainment, all that stuff, who cares at the end of the day? It's coming back, and I think a lot of people will have fun with it. And by the way, the jetpack missions in that first game, oh my god. Like, Logan, can you remember the jetpack missions in the first game?
It's been a hot minute. You'd have to remind me. If it's anything like the second one, the jetpack parts, it'll be awesome.
Yeah, basically the jetpack missions are exactly the same. You get given a power
Okay,
hammer,
awesome.
and you go absolutely nuts. It's so cool. And I think the cool thing about Space Marine is it gives you a power trip feeling, right? Because in the first game especially, you have this hammer, this power hammer that basically it's covered in lightning, and you have a jetpack, and you can slam it down to the ground to kill enemies. It's so much fun. It's arguably the best part of the game. And I think there's like, if I remember correctly, there's 12 chapters in the first game, and I think 4 or 5 of them are jetpack missions. But yeah, I think a lot of people are going to have fun with it. What can I say? Anyway, we'll move on. But yeah, Space Marine Remaster coming out next month. It's going to be fun. You know what? Let's talk about this, because I think it's going to affect a lot of people. I'm one of the people that actually were looking forward to this game, and that is Marathon. For people like me that I watch a lot of Tarkov, Escape from Tarkov will never come to console, unfortunately. So, like, for me, this was going to be one of those games. Like, if it gives me the feeling of Tarkov, but, it's obviously going to be sci-fi, it's going to be developed by Bungie, so you're going to get excellent gameplay. So all they have to do, and I say all they have to do because, I'm a game developer, apparently, is just kind of copy Tarkov, but do it sci-fi style. And honestly, I actually liked the art style for the game. A lot of people are pushing back against that. I think it was cool. It was a bit different. Unfortunately, a lot of the art we saw on screen wasn't actually made by Bungie. They had the
I was
whole.
about to say, Bungie really liked that art too.
Yeah. My God. The sad thing is, they're gonna have to go over every single individual art piece for that game, every piece of art, and like that's hundreds, if not thousands, of pieces of art throughout the entire game. Apparently Sony doesn't have any planned marketing strategy right now. Honestly, I think it's in the game's best interest. Just delay it, right? There's no point putting out a game where it's going to release one in a busy period, It launches, I think, a week and a half or 2 weeks after Borderlands 4. Um, you know, they should really delay it, put in features people want, put in a PvE mode, put in proximity chat, put in a solo only queue, because ex- extraction games aren't big on console, but it's the one genre of games where people are looking at thinking, hey, we want this genre to be big, we can make a lot of money doing it. I think the well has ran dry with Battle Royale games. I think Warzone, Fortnite, Apex, these are going to be the mainstays. They'll stick around forever. I think any new players coming into the game, they don't really have much of a chance. People are creatures of habit. They're not going to play some random new Battle Royale game for a long period of time when they have Warzone or Fortnite on the hard drive. Well, extraction shooters, they don't really have that on console. There's currently two, I believe, two or three. None of them are good, in my opinion, from what I've played. So, like, for me, it's either going to be Marathon on console that gets big or Arc Raiders. Technically, both can, but I think for different reasons. Um, but them not having a planned marketing strategy right now for paid marketing, I think the game's going to be delayed. I think we'll hear about it soon because originally they were going to have an open beta. Looks like that's not going to happen now. But like, I really wanted this game to be successful. I still want it to be successful, but Bungie, they are having a very hard time right now. I can't imagine what the higher ups at Sony talking about. A lot of people at Bungie allegedly uh, want Sony to gut the place. And, I can't mention certain words on the channel, but there's been certain allegations against people at the studio, bad things. And yes, I think Sony need to go in and clear house, because the Bungie we loved back in the Halo Reach days, where they were at the tippity top of the mountain, they're not that Bungie anymore. It's terrible what's going on over Bungie, but I think the game's going to be delayed probably in the next couple of months. It technically has to be if it is. But it's just unfortunate because this game could have been huge and they've just done everything wrong about it. Logan, what do you think? Because we've talked about Bungie for the past few shows and it just seems it's like a never ending cycle of negative news.
Yeah, like on top of the 4 times of plagiarism and allegations regarding inappropriate behavior with leadership and just a whole huge list of things that are red flags about how they operate, how they, and not even just operate like, game development wise, but financially, all kinds of stuff. It's just there's so many warning signs with the studio and how they've been operating since, Destiny 2. And it's concerning, and frankly, I think this game is DOA. I think that, in fact, I wouldn't be shocked if this game spooks Sony enough to where they kind of quietly off screen kill it. Like, and make it like a Friday news dump, like this thing is just dead. Um, may they probably won't, but I don't know. It just has a vibe that there's just something weird with this game. And it wouldn't shock me if you just wake up one day and it's trending on Twitter from like Jason Schreier or something post that Sony has quietly ended development on Marathon or something like that. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if that happens. They'll probably try to just delay it and refix it, but as you saw with Concord, sometimes there's only so many ways you can pretty up a terrible game. And sometimes it's just not worth it and it can't be prettied up enough. And this one has those vibes to me, but we shall see. This is this is definitely not Noble Team Bungie anymore.
Yeah. I think it's a shame because, a lot of these companies, they're chasing this extraction shooter, we'll call it boom, on console because it hasn't happened yet. Um, you have Call of Duty, DMZ2, which is meant to come out next year. From what I've read about that, it sounds like it'll be really fun, but that's ages away. You have the Delta Force game, which is going to have an extraction mode, but they're not even remotely talking about the console version at the minute. They're solely focusing on PC and mobile. So like it's really between Arc Raiders and Marathon, and Arc Raiders like it's weird because Marathon had their alpha, and people were like, I do not want to pay for this game. It should be free to play. And then Arc Raiders was so good, people were like, I want to pay for this game. So people are willing to pay for an extraction shooter if it's good. Me personally, I think that these extraction shooters, they need a hook to get people in, because a lot of console players don't really know what an extraction shooter is. You know, they just think it's like a battle royale game. Fortunately, Arc Raiders has had such huge positive feedback because they've changed that game behind the scenes for the past year and a half. Originally, it was more of a game like Destiny or The Division. Now it's an extraction game. People clearly like it. But yeah, Marathon. What a rough situation, because I've spoken to people at Bungie over the years, and they're really nice people, but the problem is it's always the higher ups at these companies and developers. Like it's always the higher ups causing these issues, not listening to feedback, and like everything I've heard about Marathon from behind the scenes, like they're not taking simple feedback. The fact that people want proximity chat, and the developers said, "Oh no, we want to do things our way." But proximity chat is kind of necessary for an extraction shooter. So yeah. And the thing is, a lot of people that listen to this podcast, I know you like single player games, but have to talk about it. And I do think that more people will try different things over time. Like I always talk about how I love playing single player games. I mainly play RPGs. It's one of the reasons why I like Xbox's roadmap, because it consists of mainly single player games. But like I really got into Warzone over the past couple of months. Warzone is so addictive. If people haven't played it yet, highly recommend it. But yeah, just try different things, and that's why I'm looking forward towards extraction shooters. Maybe, who knows? Maybe I'll play Arc Raiders on Marathon after looking forward to a Tarkov-like experience, and maybe I'll not like it. But that's the thing about video games. You can be hyped about a video game and it come out and it could be disappointing to you. I'm one of the people that thought, I used to think Grand Theft Auto 5 was disappointing. The story. I've put thousands of hours into the multiplayer. I think the story of 5, should I say, was weak. Absolutely weak compared to 4. 4's story was gritty. It was more realistic. There was more heart to it. And, 5 seemed a bit like a circus. It seemed too self-aware up its own, what side. I feel like I'm ranting about Grand Theft Auto at some point every week now. I apologize. But yeah, Marathon, rough situation. Hopefully they get the act together, because, again, the game looks really cool to me. I want an extraction shooter like that on console. It's taking time. Anyway, we'll move on. Now, we've been going live for, almost an hour now. If you're enjoying the show, please like, share, and subscribe. It really does help the algorithm out, hitting that like button. I hate doing these little ads, but it does help the channel out and help the podcast grow. If you want to support the channel with super chats, I'll answer any of your questions, all that stuff. It's greatly appreciated, and it all goes back into the channel. Now, we forgot this topic, Logan, because you brought it up, and it's actually a cool one. Keep it short. During the Warhammer showcase, there was another game that was announced, which is also coming to Xbox, and that's Warhammer 40k BoltGun 2. Talk about it, Logan.
Oh, BoltGun is, like, everybody knows I'm a huge fan of boomer shooters. The 90s, early 2000s era, FPS. It has certain gameplay and vibes and level designs to them. And there's been a recent renaissance of that genre. And BoltGun is one of the better games in this renaissance to come out, where you play as this Space Marine guy, Callum Ordo, I believe is his last name.
Yeah, I
Or
think so,
I
yeah.
can't remember. I know Callum is part of his name, and he's got this kind of beak-looking mask that's super cool. And like, if you think a normal Space Marine or Captain Titus, is powerful. Like this guy just murks things. Like he's going bare hand fisticuffs with like demigod entity things and tearing rifts and just has all these crazy OP guns and weapons and ability, and it's designed like Quake, and the graphics are like 4K upscaled and very nice, like today's standard, but the visuals and the aesthetic is very much like Quake era. And it's awesome. Highly recommend it. It and its expansion are brilliant, and they announced a sequel, and it is directly related to Space Marine and Space Marine 2 as well. Like there are references to they reference each other in the games. If you've played them both, you know. So I can't wait for this. So excited it was announced. And it's from Arok Studios. I think it has like a bull logo.
Yeah.
They're a really good small studio.
If I remember correctly, isn't that also published by Focus Entertainment?
I believe it is. Focus is like they have been on a generational heater lately.
Yeah.
Focus is fantastic. Them and Aperna, Devolver. Like there are just some indie publishers. It's like, yeah, blank check. Just like send it out there and I'll play it because they don't miss. They're really good.
Yeah. I mean, Focus Entertainment seems to be a publisher I glaze on a weekly basis, but they've earned
You're
it.
not the only one. They're really good.
Yeah, I mean, their games are so good, and if people people call it AAA slop. If people ever get sick of AAA slop, just go to Focus Entertainment's website and look at the games they put out. Like there are AAA games there, but there are double A and indie games. But like all of their games are interesting. So much variety there, and a lot of their games, if not all of them, they're all single player. No microtransactions, none of that fluff, and yeah, they are the best publisher to me at least. Um, but yeah, BoltGun 2, it looked fantastic. I mean, it is a boomer shooter, but it does everything you want in that game. And like in the first one, and I think it's still in Game Pass. Uh, if you press Y, it's just a shout button. It's a button where you just taunt enemies. So
Oh
like
yeah, it's so fun.
yeah, it does absolutely nothing. It's just hilarious. And so as you're mowing down like thousands of orcs with a chainsaw sword, you can just like spout like stuff from the Warhammer universe. But yeah, Bolt Gun 2 looks fantastic. It's coming to Xbox Series X and S in 2026. Not liking how futuristic these years are sounding, but it looks super cool. And I believe there was two other Warhammer games announced for Xbox that day as well. There's an RPG, and I think there's a tactical game. I didn't actually get to watch the whole Warhammer show yet, but anyway, the games are super cool. And I'll mention this as well that for people that like, what do you call it? Baldur's Gate 3. There's a Baldur's Gate 3 style RPG in the Warhammer 40k universe on Game Pass right now, and it's called Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader. Uh, I've had this game installed for ages, and I keep meaning to play it, but to dedicate 60, 80 hours into a new RPG when I've got 5 games going on, that's a commitment I can't make yet. But it looks super cool. If you've got Game Pass and you like RPGs, why not? It's something cool. Um, I think we'll talk about this quickly. Will we stream ED multiplayer? I will say this: I love Gears of War. I will play Gears of War from now till the day I die. Multiplayer is something I can't get into for Gears of War. I just can't do it. I'm just terrible. Not gonna lie. People doing that whole wall bouncing technique, not for me. And I don't really play many multiplayer games as it is. I play Warzone basically twice a week for an hour. So like outside of that, multiplayer, it's not for me. I do plan on streaming more games on the channel in the future. Like I'm going to go through the entire Mass Effect trilogy in the next couple of months. Got a really cool thing planned for that. Gears of War single player games. The upcoming Xbox showcase, that'll be fun. But yeah, live streams are coming. It's fun stuff. Anyway, let's move on. You know what? We'll talk about this quickly because it's actually a big topic. So, Expedition 33, if people don't know, sold 3.3 million units in 33 days, as we said earlier in the show. But something very interesting from that is that its price. You know, it launched in Game Pass Ultimate Day One, really cool game. But it launched at I think $50 in the US, and I think it was £45. I think its price had a huge factor in this. You know, not the whole factor. You know, it's a great game. It had great marketing. The trailers were fantastic. It got people interested in the story. But I think it being a low priced game got people really interested because not everyone's on Game Pass, and I think we're in an age where people are getting fed up of being nickel and dimed with video games all the time. Maybe it's a microtransaction in any game. Maybe it's a battle pass in a premium $70 game. And I think, you know, the horizon of $80 games looking very likely. To have a game of this caliber come out and it being so greatly received, come out at $50 has made people really reevaluate how much these games should cost, but also realize how much bang for the buck they're getting in these like shorter, not even shorter, but lower priced games. So you have Oblivion Remastered, $50. You have Mafia: The Old Country coming out in August, $50. And you have Expedition 33, which is what essentially a 30 to 80 hour JRPG, $50. Like, I think price is a huge factor. I think 50 is a, and some developers will not like what I'm about to say. I think $50 is the perfect price for a video game. Bloody perfect. Logan, we talk about price a lot, and I think at the age of where games are looking like they're going to be 80, I think the $50 price tag is really helping with this game and other games such as Elder Scrolls and next up Mafia and stuff.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the price definitely helps. I don't think it's the sole reason, but I think it's like a combination of factors, and it's like a and that little bit of extra, special something to drop in the mix to make this perfect storm that causes tremendous success. Because, like, to me, you look at the game and you're playing it, you're experiencing and all this. It's like this is triple A game, but made from a smaller studio, and they're absolutely curb stomping and taking names like all these big budget crazy titles from major studios right now. And like honestly, it would be a big upset if they didn't clean house at award season. Like it's incredible. And it's $50. And not only is it that help, but it's also in Game Pass. So people are more likely to give it a chance. They're like, I've never really been a JRPG guy before, or I'm not that big into French stuff, but I'm going to give this a chance and see what I think. And then lo and behold, people are like, wow, they really cooked here. This is incredible. And then, sales skyrocket and everything. Like you said, $50 feels like a perfect price point, and I think especially for a new IP. Like I wish games were just, $50 or $60 and then lower, like, flex pricing for the amount of experience, gameplay, whatever, scale, etc. But, seeing as we're going to 70 and 80 and potentially higher soon, it it just seems like more companies should take this to heart and should release new IPs for $50. And so it sets it up for more success, because I think that not only is it risky to make a new IP in this market, but to charge at a premium out of a price when everybody's already hurting financially, it just it puts it behind the wheel. Like Immortals of Avum, for example, like that really cool, like basically magic shooter
Oh yeah.
game that was published by EA. They put that sucker at full price, like a premium price, and it was a brand new IP from a studio people had never heard of, and it was really cool and well done. But they set that thing up to fail as a brand new IP from a small studio at a premium price. So it it's just it's not why Expedition 33 has had all the success it has, but it has certainly helped, and I think more people should take that to heart and release more of these 49.99, 39.99, and 29.99 games. It works, and more people will buy more of those games. Publishers like Focus Home will continue to put out bang for your buck, and everybody wins. It Nobody wins when the big companies start charging more for less. Nobody wins.
Yeah. Immortals of Aven being $70, that basically killed the game off. It really did. They had such a cool concept for a video game because it was described as a Call of Duty FPS campaign, but with magic and dragons. And
Yeah, it
like,
was like Doom
yeah,
mixed with Doctor Strange or something. It was really cool.
yeah, and like $70, like nobody was playing that game day one, and it's such a cool game. Like if people like get the chance to play it, I don't know if it's still on Game Pass or not. But yeah, it's a really cool first-person shooter, and we will never get a sequel to it because again, absolutely failed. Like the studio now, I believe, is just a few people. Where I don't even know what they're doing, but yeah,
Maintaining, probably.
basically, yeah. But such a cool idea. I think that the territory, and I talk about it all the time, how I think there's going to be a video game crash in the AAA space, but like price is going to be a big factor. And every time there's a game announced and it's $50, people really pay attention to it. Before we continue, we have the first super chat of the day by Nick Wendland. Thank you very much for the $4.99. He says, "What are some frustrating video game levels?" Oof, I could talk all day about this. Um, I know I can't remember the name of the area, but I'm sure people will know what I'm talking about because I've mentioned this before, and I swear I actually have nightmares about this. In Final Fantasy X, there's a part of the game where you're on a ship traveling to another island with your crew, and the big antagonist in the game, Sin, is this huge giant space fish type thing, and basically this fin rises out at one side of the ship, and you have to fight it. It's a boss battle, right? And it's a tough boss battle, and I was really not prepared for it. And this was before YouTube was around, so like I didn't know this boss fight was coming. And then after you beat this boss battle, this fin sticking out of the water that's like the size of like an 8-story building. It goes back into the water. You think the boss battle's done, and then seconds later, after a little cutscene, a fin rises out of the water on the opposite side of the ship, meaning you have to do the same boss battle twice in a row without any saves. And I was so angry, I stormed out of the house. Right? I was so angry. I was like, how could they do this to me? I can't believe you've done this. Um, Levels like that in video games really, really annoy me, where you have multiple boss battles without any checkpoints. I can't stand that stuff, and it's very common in some JRPGs. Like Expedition 33 has that sometimes. Uh, Basically, if there's a JRPG style game with multiple boss phases that you don't see coming, absolutely frustrating. And also underwater levels. We've been playing video games our whole lives, and technology is pretty decent at the minute. If we have photorealistic graphics, we're going to be sending people to like other planets like Mars and stuff. Yet underwater levels in video games are still bad. Why is that? I feel like we should be far enough in video game technology to where we can have fun underwater levels, but it's just not happening. Right? I used to
They've
praise.
been the same since the early O's.
Yeah, it's terrible. Ever since Sonic with the underwater stuff, to Witcher 3, and I love The Witcher 3. I think it's a masterpiece, but the underwater stuff can be, you can panic sometimes. I think underwater levels as much as I want to like them, they're terrible. But mainly bosses with multiple, phases. And also, I'm ranting a bit. I hate it when you're put into an obvious boss room where you can see from a mile away it's a boss room. There's no way to get out until you've obviously fought the multiple waves of enemies plus the bosses, where there's next to no health. Right? If I'm put in a scenario where I'm going to expel a lot of ammo or mana, if it's a JRPG or something, just please give me health potions more often. And while I was talking about Final Fantasy X, I'll mention this one thing. There's a part in Final Fantasy X where you're walking through these like snowy mountains and you have to fight this giant mech that looks like a Megazord, basically. I was so unprepared for that battle. It was so tough, and it was excruciating. And I will glaze Final Fantasy X all day, but that game is so frustrating. there's a there's a summon in Final Fantasy X where you basically pay for moves, and the moves are random. So you can give this summon basically one gil and get the best move in the entire game, wipe out the enemy, right? Or sometimes you could pay 1,000,000 gil, wipe out all your money, and get the like the least powerful move in the game. It was so random. It was unfair. I didn't like it. But again, I love that game. Logan, what are some frustrating game levels for you?
Oh gosh, I mean, Ocarina of Time Water Temple is up there.
Yeah.
That that one was infamously brutal. The the big tree boss in the original Dark Souls,
Oh yeah.
because it's like you had to jump a certain way, or you get knocked down by these stupid limbs, and then you have to find your way all the way through this lava place again to get back to the tree. And there was no quick way back to the boss if you missed, so it was just very unfair and cheap feeling. And underwater levels for the most part have been very static and boring. I wish they could do more. Underwater's such a cool concept. Like I remember when I heard Starfield had a city, called Atlantis. I got so excited thinking it was going to be this awesome Gungan city underwater type vibe. And then no, it's just your traditional spaceport sci-fi city. And I mean, it was still nice, but just like those are huge. Or like, for example, Octopath Traveler, fantastic JRPG. Love it. Make it to the very end. Beat the game with all 8 characters. And then after that, there's the ultra secret boss. It's like, okay, cool. I'm going to go fight the ultra secret boss. What happens? You remember all the bosses for all the 8 characters at the end of their individual quests? Well, we're going to make you fight all 8 of those. And then after that, you get to fight the super secret boss.
Yeah.
And then after that, oh, guess what? He had a second wave. And we're going to divide your team up in half. And it's just that kind of stuff drives me crazy.
Yeah. And I'll mention this one last thing because I think I mention this on a weekly basis. The first the first main boss in Lost Odyssey.
Oh, the blue worm,
The
yeah.
blue worm. I feel like any podcast I'm on, I have to bring this up at some point because I think I have legitimate PTSD for gaming at least when it comes to this boss battle. Like the first main boss, not the tutorial boss where you fight the giant mech. Like the first main boss in Lost Odyssey is the hardest boss in the game. What were Miss Walker like smoking? Like this blue worm that has intense, power when it hits you. It has ridiculously high health and defense, and again, this game's on sand, tropical setting, and you just like throwing all your fire bombs at this enemy, and it's doing nothing. Like there's a little patch of sand outside of that boss area. I must have grinded for like 20 hours leveling up because I needed to get past that worm boss. And yeah, uh, like to get people into a JRPG and then have the first main boss to be the hardest, and then like an hour later you fight a giant bird, which is it has this ridiculous like amount of health. Please. Then again, I talk about Lost Odyssey all the time and I praise it because I love that game. But yeah, Those are some extremely frustrating levels. Also, Blighttown and Dark
Oh
Souls.
my gosh.
Yeah, like do you know
Yeah,
what?
that was just evil.
Yeah, do you know what the boss battle of that game was? Its frame rate. When you went into Blighttown in Dark Souls, the frame rate must have tanked to like 8 frames a second. Whoever, there's something about that area, and I know because Dark Souls did this thing where it would load in all the assets for an area, and even though you couldn't see stuff going on, it was still happening. So that's why that area was so slow. But Blighttown and Dark Souls was designed to make a GPU suffer, and they clearly, did the job right because that's an awful area. I don't know what it's like in the remaster, but what were they thinking with that area? Absolutely terrible.
It was not great.
No, it was a maze where there was like several different tunnels where there were some decent items. That I watched so many guides for Dark Souls in Blighttown back in the day that I used to have a YouTube stream up, wondering how I get to the other side, and I'd still get bloody lost. And then again, I'd say Dark Souls is close to a masterpiece. I love that game. Anyway, let's see what we've got. We've still got like 40 topics. You know what? This is going to be fun. So, Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D remake got its official release date today. It's going to be October 30th, and it's going to be coming to Xbox Series X and S. Bloody lovely news. We're obviously going to be seeing more gameplay, I think, next month. They had a huge success with the last one. Square Enix seems to have a really good track record with their HD 2D remakes. I think it's a cool art style. I really do. I think that if you're gonna make a game that's 16-bit into modern, times, I think that's the best way to do it. Maybe don't do full 3D, but have that so it's still got its pixelated charm. I'm cool with it. I like that art style. Logan, what do you think of this? Because it is a new Square Enix game, albeit a remake coming to Xbox.
Yeah, I'm definitely down for this. With the recent remake they did a fantastic job with it of that other older Dragon Quest game, and they're bringing more of their mainline series and entries to the platform. It's great news. Looking forward to this one. Hopefully, Square brings over some other more obscure IP of theirs to the platform as well.
Yeah, I mean, more JRPGs on Xbox the better. But the funny thing is that the last game, or should I say the third one in the series, did come to Xbox. It was successful. It didn't launch in Game Pass. Square Enix was clearly happy with how it sold on all platforms, and I think in the UK, on the Xbox store, it was in the top 10 the month it released, which is very cool because it was kind of pricey for the kind of game it was. I think at least in the UK. Um, Now, Square Enix has been promising over the past 2 years that they're going to include Xbox in their multi-platform strategy going forward. We've seen some games come to Xbox, such as Crisis Core Reunion, which I bloody love that game. I will talk about that game all day. But some games haven't came to Xbox, but up and through till I think halfway through 2027, where their current business plan just ends. Apparently, I think that's with their fiscal quarter. They include an Xbox once again in their multi-platform strategy, and as people know, Final Fantasy VII, people like that game, right? The remake was successful, and it didn't come to anything else for a while. I think it only came to PC a couple of years ago, and it was announced for the Switch 2 during the Switch showcase. Graphically, by the way, they are doing some wonderful things on the Switch 2. The Switch 2 version of Final Fantasy VII looks phenomenal. So, whatever, cauldron of, dark magic they're using, it's working. But people were wondering, where's Final Fantasy VII Remake? Because, it was announced for Switch. In fact, my prediction was it was going to be announced for Xbox a couple of hours later, because that's typically what happens with these multi-platform games that eventually come over. That didn't happen. So as you can imagine, on social media, people start bookmarking and liking a bunch of my old posts. It happens. People like getting those receipts. But honestly, the Xbox Game Showcase, it's next Sunday next week. I 1000%, and I know I may be taking the whole broken clock is right twice a day approach when it comes to Final Fantasy VII, but I don't care anymore. I think Final Fantasy VII will be announced for Xbox during the showcase, and I think 16 will shadow drop during the show. Now, it's been a long time coming. People have been waiting for years at this point for this game to come to Xbox. And like, look, I played 7 as a little kid. Didn't understand the story at the time because I was too young, but like, it's a classic. It's a fantastic game, and I've been wanting the sequel, or well, not the sequel, the remake to come to Xbox forever. Rebirth is apparently coming to Xbox next year, and apparently the third game in the series is coming to Xbox as well as the other platforms the same day, which is what groovy in my opinion. I think this is going to happen. Now, obviously, people may clip this, come back next week, and say you're wrong or you're right, but I think that if it's a third-party game, especially, it should just be on everything at this point. You know, Japanese developers are still putting their games on Xbox. Final Fantasy VII is probably the most requested Japanese game ever to come over to Xbox, and I think it's happening. Who knows whatever like exclusivity contract agreement Sony has with Square Enix, but the fact it's coming to Switch without a release date, by the way, I think we'll get a release date for October. Now, Logan, I've been talking non-stop about Final Fantasy for about 5 minutes, and I need a drink. What's your thought on the whole Final Fantasy thing? Because, Square Enix, they are making slow moves about bringing more games to Xbox. Dragon Quest is already on Xbox with the next one coming. Kingdom Hearts 4 had some gameplay on Twitter. I think it's on YouTube now. It looks super cool. I'm guessing that's going to be on Xbox since 3 in the collection is. All eyes are on Final Fantasy, and people are waiting.
Yeah, I personally think 7 and 15, or I mean, excuse me, not 15, 16 will be coming to Xbox this year. I If it's gonna happen, I think it's gonna be the Xbox showcase next week. If not, then by golly, then the Tokyo showcase, whenever that is, would be like the last chance. And then if for some reason it's still not there, at that point, then I think you sound the alarms about like what on earth is going on with this game because this went from a Ice Cube's chance, I thought, of coming to the platform to now I think it's inevitable. But there with the caveat that some of these contracts these companies have might have some real teeth to them, even if one of the parties has changed their tune and wants some different stuff. If they have some hefty legal binding documents or something, that can complicate matters. Usually there's a buyout or something you can do for this kind of stuff, but sometimes there's not. Or sometimes it's so prohibitive that it's ridiculous. But, like, it wouldn't shock me at all if in a hypothetical contract, if Sony put in a, anywhere but Xbox because forget them, that's why, kind of clause in a contract where it's allowed on Switch, it's allowed on PC, it's allowed anywhere but Xbox. But then again, we haven't seen it, so we don't know. There are people who have been quite accurate on leaking stuff within the last few years that are convinced it's happening and have seen evidence that it's happening. So I tend to believe them, and I firmly believe that since Square is committed to bringing their library to Xbox going forward, that they will bring 7 and bring 16 over as well. But it wouldn't be an out of this world possibility that it just doesn't happen. Just saying it is possible, it just doesn't happen. But I do believe it will. And, aside from those, like, I really want Parasite Eve or, Chrono Trigger remake to be a thing or, you know, um, Final Fantasy Tactics, like Triangle Strategy, Valkyrie. Like there are several other Square things that have never been on Xbox that why not at this point? You have finally left your failed to meet expectations era, so why not try to make as much money as you can on some of your older stuff too?
Yeah. I mean, we'll know next week. I think it will be very telling what's there. And the thing is, there were rumors back in April, or should I say March, that there was going to be an Xbox partner preview. They tend to have one earlier on in the year, and they just didn't have one this year. So like maybe they had one planned, and then decided to integrate that stuff into their showcase. Who knows? But there's going to be millions of eyes watching this showcase, and we'll do our full predictions next week. But I do expect to be several JRPGs there. Microsoft does tend to have a few JRPGs on their showcases every year now, which is great. But like, there's so many games people want to come to the platform, but it's mainly 7 Remake. Like, don't get me wrong, I think 16 will be great on Xbox as well, but like 7 Remake, that's the big one. Like, I can't think of any other game people want more on the platform than that. And 100%
Dino Crisis, maybe.
Dino Crisis. Like, bit of a tangent. Like, that's such an easy amount of money for Capcom to make, by the way. Just
Resident Evil dinosaurs.
Yeah,
It's
Resident
easy
Evil
money.
dinosaurs. And the thing about that is, like, it would essentially be a new IP to millions of people. And you could have that in between Resident Evil games. What, they popping out a new Resident Evil game every other year now? What they could do, Dino Crisis in between. I miss Dino Crisis so much. It's such a weird game because it was literally just Resident Evil but with velociraptors. But it worked. And then you had the third game, which was doing like mech suits and fighting dinosaurs with laser rifles.
It was anime acid trip. It was crazy.
Yeah, basically. But Square Enix, I hope they actually deliver because, like, look, Square Enix, I may have my faults with them, but they make bloody good games. And I always talk about Crisis Core on social media and on this channel. Crisis Core is an amazing JRPG. It really is. It's a 20-hour-long JRPG. There's next to no bloat whatsoever. In fact, you can play that game and there's no grinding needed. Maybe you have to on the hardest difficulty, but I never once went out my way to get into combat where I didn't need to. And it took me, I think, 18 hours, 45 minutes to finish. And I didn't rush it. I took my time with it. I left a lot of the side quests out. It's such a fun JRPG, and a lot of people tell me that they do not want to buy Crisis Core Reunion until the remake is announced, and I completely understand. Why would you want to play the prequel to a game you're not going to be able to play? And there's some debate whether it's a prequel to the original or the remake. I think it's to the remake because of the cutscene that happens after the credits. That's all I'll say. But yeah, Square Enix, they need to deliver. It's the most requested game on the platform, more so than Warcraft and basically anything else. Hopefully they deliver. I think next week it's going to be a good show, though. Allegedly it's going to be better than last year's. I don't know how you do that. Last year's show was so good. Yeah, last year's show was so good that I don't know how you top it. And even if they don't top it and it's just as good, that's an absolute win for gamers. Because to me, that was a 10 out of 10 showcase. If anything, it was the best showcase ever. Pacing, content, surprises. They had all of them. And they absolutely delivered. So, again, we'll talk more about that next week. But, yeah, Final Fantasy 7 and 16. Like I said, I think 16 will shadow drop during the show. And 16, or should I say 7 Remake will arrive in October. That's a mouthful. Anyway, we'll move on. We'll talk about this quickly because Grand Theft Auto, it's going to be a big game. I think a lot of people are going to like it. It's going to break records. Let's be honest. It's going to, sell 25 million units in the first week. I'm lowballing it. There has been some talk that they will be launching the multiplayer a month after the single player. I can totally believe that. The multiplayer for GTA 5, it launched in an absolute broken state. It wasn't working at all day one. And, they launched that later. And it still didn't pan out for them. They had a ton of issues. And eventually they turned it into what can be called a gambling mechanic game. People can buy them. It's a pay-to-win game, basically. It never used to be that way. But what GTA Online now is, it's a pay-to-win game. I think Rockstar, they're gonna make $1 billion in the first day. They have to be really careful with how they approach the GTA Online scenario, because they're gonna have millions of players wanting to move over, and there's lots of players like me that have millions of dollars. I've earned $370 million in GTA Online total. That's earned, not with microtransactions, earned. And I think there's going to be a lot of people going to be very surprised when they find out that you cannot transfer your funds to the new game. It would completely break the economy, because if people remember what GTA Online was like back when it came out, the economy was fair. Sports cars cost like 100 grand, and now you've got cars that cost upwards of $5 million. You have apartments that cost millions of dollars. So if you let people jump into the game with potentially billions of dollars, you break the economy, and it's a pay-to-win scenario from the get-go. So them coming out with the multiplayer a month later, I completely understand, and I think that will happen. Because otherwise it will launch broken like it did last time. A lot of people think this game's been in development since 2013. It really hasn't. It's been in development since 2018. There has been some talk that Liberty City is also going to be in the game. I'm not running with that whatsoever. I cannot believe that Rockstar would put in multiple cities of different regions in the same GTA game. At all. I can't believe it. I would love to be wrong. I would love to be proven wrong, but I can't see it happening. Uh, you know, I think Grand Theft Auto has so much anticipation for it that I think it's going to let a lot of people down. I've changed my thoughts on the game over the past year, because I like, if you go back a couple of podcasts ago, I was super down on GTA 6, super down on Rockstar, because they don't do single player expansions anymore. The pay to win elements in Grand Theft Auto Online is ridiculous. Grand Theft Auto 5 story was disappointing compared to 4. So, like, after seeing that last Grand Theft Auto trailer, it got me excited again. But the realization is that Grand Theft Auto 6 cannot possibly live up to the hype of people wanting a brand new one for, what, 13 years? Like, it's a tall order to ask for. And, I see a lot of posts online saying, oh my god, Grand Theft Auto 6 is a generational leap above 5. Well, I'd bloody hope so. That's a 360 game. Of course it looks better. Um, but I'm rambling, sorry. Uh, them putting the multiplayer out a month later, I think that's fine. Logan, what do you think? Because I know you don't do multiplayer in general, but I think that maybe with something like Grand Theft Auto being this big, you'll give it a go.
I probably won't play online on this one, to be honest. Like, it just doesn't appeal to me, the idea of a GTA experience online. I know a lot of people like it. It's just not my cup of tea per se. But the main game itself does look awesome, and I'll pick it up for sure. I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be, Florida Man Simulator, basically mixed with, Crime Syndicate and all the crazy GTA, social commentaries on things. But unlike the others, like, I might wait a bit to get it, because I have a feeling the price on this sucker is gonna be rather high.
Yeah. That's going to be very tricky, isn't it? Because I think Take Two, they are looking at all the other companies right now, because we can realistically look at Mario Kart Worlds and think, like, that game's going to sell amazing, right? It's going to sell millions of copies. It's probably going to sell like 80 million copies or something when the Switch 2 generation's done. But, like, that's $80, right, for a game that looks like that. I think Take Two, they can, and I hate to say this, I think Take Two is going to think that they can price GTA 6 at whatever they want. I'm talking more than $100. And I have heard some massive Twitch streamers say that people will pay $150 for it, and it's fine. It's not fine, not on my watch. I complained about $70. I complained about 80. If it goes a penny more, I'm gonna go nuclear. Like, no. And, like, Logan, realistically, what do you think the price is gonna be?
I think it will bare minimum be 80. I think. th- I've heard some others put some ideas out there, like the idea of there being like a price for just the single player normal GTA experience, and then a price for just the online, and then like a premium bundle that includes both. Like, see the campaign being $80 or maybe 70 if they're generous. Probably not. It's Take Two. Who are we kidding? 80 for just the base campaign and general experience, and then like have a 35 to 55 for multiplayer, and then like having them combined for like a 110, maybe something like that. Like, I hope I'm wrong, but it's Take Two, and they really, really like money, so it wouldn't shock me.
Yeah, I mean the splitting thing is something I have heard they might do. Uh, I could totally see that happening. I can totally see that happening, and like it being Rockstar, I don't think they'll do free to play. they, they have so much money to make from the multiplayer alone that it will never be free to play. Like Rockstar can get that money, unfortunately, um, but it is what it is. Like separating them, if I think you're right, I think they will do like campaign 80, multiplayer 2030, and they'll get away with it. Although I will be one of those people on the internet saying don't support this game, and I'll be looking at it thinking I really want to play this game. My God, I can only think of how much money this game's going to make in just microtransactions alone. And if people haven't played GTA Online for a while, it is a pay to win mess. You have people on hoverbikes firing rockets at people. It's definitely not good for new players. The economy's broken. The fact that they lock off cars to their subscription service, the fact that they remove cars from the store to buy in general, it's a messy situation that's going over on a GTA Online. But and then if you play on PC, apparently GTA Online is filled to the brim with cheaters. Um, Unfortunately, Call of Duty has been going through that as well. Although we'll talk about that next week. But yeah, that's Grand Theft Auto, and I think it's going to break every record known to man. Apparently, Avengers Doomsday may have moved its release date because of Grand Theft Auto. I can see that being a thing. You know, Avengers, I'm sure it'll do well whenever it comes out. But if you launching a new Avengers movie in a time where they really want to make Avengers movies or Marvel films get $1 billion again, if you come out the same day as a Grand Theft Auto game, you aren't winning that battle. You just aren't. Like Logan, do you think that any Avengers film could compete against GTA?
Well, this might sound naive. I do think it could, because I think that there's enough crossover, and that a movie is something you go see for, an hour to 3.5 hours, depending on the film, and a one time, sit session, and then you're done. Unless you want to go back and watch it again. And then gaming is different. Like, you play it and it's, extended play or different modes, different all this stuff. And then the fact that there'll be a bunch of people who can go see Marvel stuff that wouldn't be age appropriate for, playing Grand Theft Auto. Even though, let's be honest, there's so many people playing that game that shouldn't be playing that game anyway. But um I just overall I think it could still succeed even with GTA launching because of several factors, but I don't think it would be wise to test that.
Yeah, like you said, there's going to be so many people that shouldn't be playing GTA Day One. Like, I don't really weren't really going to talk about this, but I'll bring it up because it's actually a good thing to talk about. Like, obviously, kids of any age do play things like Call of Duty and GTA Online and just GTA Online, basically any violent video game. Um, when I was little, like basically couldn't understand what these games were about. Like I was allowed to play violent video games, but they didn't look realistic in any capacity. because they looked kind of cartoony. But now, like
Hmm.
Grand Theft Auto 6, it's going to be a very like photorealistic, violent game. Like, should people let their kids play these games? I don't really think so. But again, that doesn't stop people. I mean, hell, you play Call of Duty, turn on the mic, and you hear squeakings. Like, we call them squeakers. Uh, Super high pitched voices, music in the background. By the way, can people stop doing that? You go into chat and you have music blasting in the background. Why? Are you trying to entertain people listening? Anyway, but yeah, that's Grand Theft Auto. I'm sure it'll be great, and I'm sure they'll charge anyone any possible number for it. I'll talk about Bioshock quickly because Ken Levine is developing a new game called Judas, which was originally meant to come out in March. Now, that game has had no updates since. I assume that it got delayed because maybe they thought Grand Theft Auto was coming out this year. I'm guessing this is a game we'll hear from during one of the summer showcases, maybe the Summer Games Fest, hosted by Jeff Keighley, featured by Jeff Keighley, all that stuff. Bioshock 4 has been up in the wind for years now. It is in development. I did hear apparently it was originally meant to come out in 2023 or 2022, but it got put back multiple years. The pandemic obviously didn't help because people working from home and stuff. I do think, along with other things that's been saying online, I do think we will actually see Bioshock 4 announced next week, be it Xbox show or the Summer Games Fest thing. This one isn't made by Jeff Keighley. Did I say Jeff Keighley? Ken Levine. This one isn't being made by Ken Levine, but I do think it's coming. I think Bioshock 4 is weird because on the 360 we had 3 Bioshock games. Then we go an entire generation without a new Bioshock game. And this one, it's been in development for like 6 years. So it looks like we could be seeing it next week. Logan, I know we haven't seen a single frame of it yet and what the setting could be. I did hear it could be set on the moon. Although I
I
don't...
was about to say space is my hunch.
Yeah. Maybe that's just wishful thinking because I do want more sci-fi games. But it looks like we could be seeing Bioshock 4 announced next week. Are you looking forward to it all?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the trilogy of BioShock games. I mean, they were iconic from, the huge plot twists, the very morally gray to like does the ends justify the means to time loops to religion to fascism to like there's all kinds of crazy stuff. And then like all the powers and the idea of you go to a vending machine and then you're like a junkie from a vending machine to get these powers. And like the little sister big daddy dynamic and like all the guys screaming crazy stuff all the time and like out of their mind and even attacking each other, the sim elements of being able to solve things or accomplish tasks differently. They were such a foundational series, so I'm definitely looking forward to 4. I have a hunch space is the next frontier, quote unquote, because I mean they started underwater and they were underwater a while and then they finally did the sky. And unless they want to just be on mainland, which doesn't seem fitting for Bioshock, I think they're gonna do something exotic for this one.
Yeah. I mean, my wish is the moon or just space in general. Because my God, we don't get enough sci-fi games. We just don't. But
Lots of fantasy, but no sci-fi.
yeah, oh my God, it's getting close to the summer showcase, so I'll have this yearly rant once again. There's like 5,000 games announced every summer, and a lot of fantasy RPGs. You have dragons, mountains, trolls. Basically anything in a fantasy game. And like sci-fi games in the AAA space feel next to non-existent. I'm talking space. I'm talking about cybernetics. I'm talking hover cars, laser beams, all that stuff. If I see one bloody dragon And the new brand new fantasy IP one more time, I'm going to lose my mind. Right? Don't get me wrong. I like fantasy. I like Lord of the Rings. I like Game of Thrones. I like The Witcher. But if I see one more mountain, one more cave with trolls and dragons are cool, don't get me wrong, but like I can't be the only person that's sick of this. Like brand new IP announced, cool, let's have a look at it. It's another fantasy game. Where's the sci-fi games? Maybe I'm just like I'm fed up of waiting for a new Mass Effect game, but I have a point about the fantasy thing. There's so many fantasy games announced all the bloody time. Why? Why? And I honestly think they just cost cheap. They're cheaper to make. I'm guessing it's cheaper to
It's a
develop.
pretty cookie cutter formula you
Yeah,
can use.
like I think it's cheaper to make a game with grassy hills and some mountain trolls or snow trolls than have neon cities filled with hover cars. It's disappointing because I obviously love Mass Effect. I love sci-fi. That I sometimes go on Xbox Live just to look for sci-fi stuff, and you'd be shocked how little there is coming. You have indie games and AA games that dabble, but for some reason, sci-fi games are super rare. And speaking of sci-fi games, uh, this topic comes up every year. Half-Life 3. Uh, it is alleged that Half-Life 3 will be the final entry in the Half-Life franchise. Now, there was a lot of people disappointed about this on social media. Let me tell you, um, do people really care for it's the last one or not? We've been waiting how long since Half-Life 2? 20 years nearly? Close to 20
Mhm.
years. Um, if this is the last one, I'm fine with this. Because at this rate, what? Half-Life 3 comes out later this year. Not saying that's when it comes out, but let's just say it does. When does Half-Life 4 come out at this rate? 2040? Like, that's realistic if you think about it. Valve aren't really good at coming out with a lot of games. When they do come out with a game, chances are it's bloody good. But like the Half-Life 3 rumor I brought up because a couple of months ago, one of the voice actors was talking about how they've been working on the game, and then someone that was apparently working on the game talking about how they doing certain art assets, and now you have this coming out that it's the last one. I can believe it, and I can't really blame people for getting upset. But at the end of the day, if we have to wait 15, 20 years between games, do people really care if there's a fourth one? Because I don't. I want a good Half-Life 3, a Half-Life 3 which I thought would never happen. And, if people watched Summer Games Fest last year or the Game Awards, Jeff Keighley kind of subtly hinted that there was going to be Half-Life 3. Can you remember that, Logan?
Yeah, and then it ended up being Okami too,
Yeah.
which was still a big announcement, but it come on now. It was not Half-Life 3.
Yeah, like that was so built up to be Half-Life 3 and then Akami 2. I'm just like, wait, what? That is not what people thought. I'm sure Akami 2 will be fantastic, but what's your thought on like Half-Life 3 being the last one if it does in fact happen this year?
I kind of just always predicted it would be.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't bother me at all. I mean, obviously in a perfect world, we Half-Life would be a, persistent and pole franchise. But to me, all I ever really wanted was a conclusion to the story. Whether it was a Half-Life 2 episode 3, like a, episode 2 sized experience that just wraps it up. Like I would have been happy with that like a decade or two ago. So the fact that, you know, assuming it does happen, that it would be the final entry and it'd be like a Half Life 3, like full on Half Life game, and be like definitively wrap up the story, loose threads, tie a nice bow on things, and be an otherworldly experience. Like, yeah, I'm cool with a one off. A, this is the last dance game for that. That doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully we see it this year, but it just seems like we've had Half-Life rumors almost every single year for I hate to say it, decades now. Um,
Yeah, since Orange Box.
yeah, Orange Box, what a great collection. But I think when people bought that, people legitimately thought we are getting an expansion to this game. Like a third expansion. Never happened. Talk about disappointment. The thing is, I know that there's people that they bought Half Life 1 day one on PC. They bought Half Life 2 day one. And those same people are waiting still for Half Life 3. And, I actually think Valve could deliver and will deliver on that game because I know there's so many years of anticipation. People think it's going to be the best game ever made. But if you look at Half Life in a nutshell, what's Half Life? It's a semi linear third person shooter just with tons of cool gameplay mechanics. They just have to follow that up with really cool gameplay mechanics, have physics based stuff. It'll be a winner. But if people go into it think it's going to be, a life altering experience where your spirit's going to shift out of your body and you're going to have like an out of life experience, out of body experience, that's not going to happen. But I'm sure it'll be a good game, and hopefully that is actually a Jeff Keighley's thing. By the way, can anyone remember when Jeff Keighley's Game Awards in, I think it was 2022, the one more thing at the end of the show was a Fast and the Furious game?
Oh gosh. And then they came out like trashed on stage and it ended up being this awful game, and then the game is I think not even available on storefronts anymore.
Yep.
It might be, but I think because of licenses it might not even be out anymore.
Yeah, the one more thing, I think it was in 2022, was for a Fast and the Furious game, which has the budget of my left shoe, basically. Um, and it looked terrible. Apparently, it played terrible. I think it is delisted from the store. And yeah, that was the one more thing that year. I think it was called Fast and the Furious Crossroads or something. Uh,
Yes, that was it.
but it looks absolutely awful. They brought Vin Diesel out on stage, who does actually play video games, by the way. But that was the one more thing. Who knows? I think I give Jeff Keighley a lot of crap, but I will say the Game Awards, that's a very well produced show, and it's actually entertaining. I just wish, maybe all the awards were given out on stage. Maybe more time was dedicated to the developers and having their speeches. Maybe Summer Games Fest. You know what? Maybe I'm just salty that E3 isn't a thing anymore. I always dreamed of going to E3 because that is the pinnacle of gaming, and it's not a thing anymore. You just have Summer Games Fest, which just happens to include other people's shows for some reason. Whereas E3 was a community thing, it was a content creation thing, and overall it was aimed at gamers and content creators. But now it just seems like the Jeff Keighley Summer Games Fest is this narrow experience. I don't know. Could just be me. Like, Logan, do you miss E3 at all?
Yes. I think it was, I know this might sound like old man yells at cloud, but I do think it was a better time when you had a week long special or like a 3 or 4 day, special where the whole industry came together, celebrated gaming, showed off all the teasers, the trailers, the products, the consoles, the devices, controllers, just everything. And then there's lots of networking, fans could meet, do all kinds of stuff. And it was like this one, huge mega event. And then that was it. And then it's like, all right, well, we'll see y'all next year. And then there might be a little snippet here or there in the news, but other than that, it unloaded the chamber all then. And then ever since the pandemic, it has been a slow trickle of news feed, you know, of game little things in a tweet here, a blog post there, a little video here, or a Twitch stream there, or yada yada yada. And it's strung out and takes forever, and it's just not as focused and fun as it used to be.
Yeah. Can you remember in 2020? Yeah, it was 2020 where, you know, the E3 was cancelled and all these companies were scrambling to do their own shows from home. and you know, Sony had they had a decently produced one because they had more tie-in, but with the terrible audio. Microsoft were doing one with the webcams.
Oh yeah, it was the potato cams and
Yeah,
like nanny cams. They were horrible.
yeah. Ubisoft did a stream that they didn't prepare for. I think Capcom did an investor stream, but people were hyped up like it was going to be a game show. That was a terrible year. That was an awful year for video game showcases. But yeah, I just miss E3. It was more fun then, and everything just feels too spread out. And when it was E3, you knew where to go. And now it's just like, okay, we have Summer Games Fest, which is hosted by Jeff Keighley, produced by Jeff Keighley, featuring Jeff Keighley and Kojima, everything by Jeff Keighley. And then we have Summer Games Fest, what? Gamescom opening night live, starring Jeff Keighley, featured by Jeff Keighley. Everything needs to be about Jeff Keighley. But yeah, it looks like it's going to be a good show next week, despite the format. It should be cool. Xbox, they're poised to have a really good show. They've had a really good show for the past few years in a row. And you know what? We'll talk about this quickly because it should be good. And that is, let me see, I have a big list here.
A quick thing while you're looking that up.
Yeah.
A couple things broke on the timeline. One is what shouldn't be shocking. Hideo Kojima will be at the Summer Games Fest, so expect something. Yeah, I know. Jeff Keighley's buddy will be there, so I know everyone's shocked by this. But so with that being out of the way, I would definitely expect either at Jeff's show or the Xbox show, or maybe both, something to do with OD, something to do with Death Stranding 2, or maybe that other project he's working on with Sony. Like maybe more info about that. But sounds like Kojima is gonna Kojima next weekend. And besides that, Devolver Direct is announcing something to do with their Direct later this week, and they posted it just an hour ago.
Yeah, I mean their show is usually off the rails. It never makes sense. It looks like they're like an acid trip beforehand, but that's always a fun watch.
Remember the Phil Spencer and Carrion cameo one?
Oh yeah,
Like that was crazy.
yeah. I love the shows they put on, and they also make fun of the game industry at the same time. When it comes to the Kojima thing, I do wonder if they'll actually come clean. Well, not come clean, but tell people what's the Death Stranding 2 situation like, because it doesn't say exclusive anywhere on the PlayStation trailers. I assume it's going to be a year. But I wonder if they're announcing something like that. Because OD is pretty far away, as far as I know. But yeah, Death Stranding 2,
Yeah,
that'll be interesting.
I'll be curious. My guess is like you, it's a year.
Yeah.
Exclusive to PlayStation. But the fact that he owns it now opens the possibility it's just everywhere day one, but I do think a year.
Yeah. Isn't Death Stranding out next week or something?
I know it launches the same date as
The Switch.
System Shock 2.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so it'll be like some point in June. I mean, who knows what'll happen. I will say this, and for people that don't know, like Death Stranding was always called this FedEx Man simulator, and it was always talked about as a walking simulator. That game is super weird. And I genuinely liked, Death Stranding. When it came to Xbox, I actually gave it a chance because it was free. Turned out I loved it, and it's a super weird game, absolutely super weird game. Because the story is all over the place in a very Kojima way. It has gameplay mechanics you don't have in other games. There's a mechanic in the game where you pee to scare off ghosts.
Pea grenades, yes.
Yeah, pea grenades, poo grenades, everything you need in life. Monster energy drinks. Although they took that out of the version we have now. I assume it was licensed and stuff. There's a going to the toilet mechanic. Like, it's so bizarre. Like June 26th, it's coming to PlayStation. So I assume like next summer it'll be out on Xbox. But yeah, Death Stranding, super weird game. I will buy the sequel the day it comes to Xbox, and I'm sure that's going to be just as weird. You know what? We'll talk about this quickly. Now, the FTC ABK whole thing is finally done and dusted. The FTC lost their court case battle with Microsoft because they were wanting to stop the sale of Activision to Microsoft. It's done. So millions of dollars of tax-paying money, uh, all wasted, because the FTC were adamant to not let this go through. Well, it's going through, and it's just good that we can finally stop talking about it. We loosely talked about it last week, but it's all done. So Microsoft can technically finish off buying Activision, Blizzard King. Maybe now we will start seeing older Activision Blizzard games in Game Pass or via backwards compatibility. But it's all done. Logan, how do you feel that millions of dollars of tax-paying money went straight to this losing battle?
Colossally annoyed that, honestly, like, that not only were millions, well, I guess we don't have the access to the fund number, but I'm going to assume an unholy amount of money was spent on legal fees, travel costs, party hosting, schmoozing, all kinds of stuff to try to get this thing done or to fight it. And it was all based on ideological and foolhardy crusade against big tech because big tech bad no matter what, instead of actually looking on a case by case basis to see if something actually fit the criteria of being a quote monopoly or a problem. And instead it was like Microsoft is getting bigger, we must stop it at all, no bars limited, just go full throttle on it. And they lost, and then they appealed, and it took them forever to finally get an appeal verdict. And then basically it was just like yeah, she was right to begin with. There's no issue here. Y'all just wasted everybody's time. Congrats, you played yourself. And so they finally just officially dropped it and are like, all right, we've washed our hands. It's done. We're not going to come harass you or bother you further. It's officially done. I mean, they had already acquired them and integrated and everything, but this thing was still kind of in the background, eating up money and eating up resources and technically, you know, making it where theoretically something could happen that would be problematic. So now that it's done, they can completely focus on making all the games available, all the new stuff with the IPs, yada yada yada. Thank goodness it's done and we don't have to talk about this anymore. And I even found it fascinating the first 100 times. But even I got burned out on it.
Yeah, it was crazy because every week every topic was FTC, ABK, ABC, bunch of random letters, and we're done with it now. It was like a weird cause because like nobody, like when Microsoft said they weren't going to stop putting Call of Duty on PlayStation, you would have thought that would have been enough. Microsoft clearly aren't going to hold back, putting Activision games elsewhere. I'm sure they'll put Black Ops 6 on the Switch 2 soon. But my God, all of that just felt like absolute waste of time, money, resources. But hey, don't really have a time machine, can't go back and change it now. Hopefully, we will actually start seeing older Call of Duty games come to Game Pass, and I always talk about this: Transformers, Cybertron 1 and 2. Those are the most wanted games, and I know there's licenses, but when Hasbro are the ones talking about it and wanting these games to come to Game Pass, obviously they'll get money up front for that, but it would just seem like an easy win. And you could do a whole new mini marketing campaign for all the Activision, Call of Duty games going to Game Pass. Because every time an old Call of Duty game comes to Game Pass, people rave on about it, they talk about it. And I think, with it being in summer, we're getting close to that time where less people buy new Call of Duty games because they're getting ready for the new one or they're saving for the new one. Putting a bunch of old Call of Duty games in the service will just incentivize people to subscribe. And plus, I won't have to pay an arm and a leg to experience Call of Duty Ghosts in 2025 because it's still practically full price. I refuse to spend £50 on a 13-year-old Call of Duty game.
Yeah, that to this day still royally pisses me off how Activision handles the cost of Call of Duty Ghosts and Advanced Warfare and even World War II and all these games. It's like, buddy, this game has been out for 12 plus years and you're still charging full price or a premium price. And then if it's at a discount, it's maybe 30 or 40. Are you kidding me? In the year 2025, we're still doing this. Like, who do you think you are, Nintendo? I mean, like, come on now.
Yeah, I mean, the old college. We'll talk about this quickly before we close out the show. But the old Call of Duty price thing that really has to be studied because over time, the old Call of Duty games from Xbox One, uh, the base bundle of the game or the base version of the game is no longer for sale, and you can just get like the gold edition, which comes with the DLC. That is such a shady practice because they're incentivizing you to not get a game for $60. They want you to pay upwards of 70. So I'll actually check the price right now. Call of Duty Ghosts. Call of Duty Ghosts. I'm typing the
Like,
code.
there's Ghost Hardened Edition,
Yeah,
Digital Prestige.
right.
Yeah.
So here it is. This is absolutely egregious, by the way. So Call of Duty Ghosts Gold Edition, $54.99. So I think that's close to $68. And then you have Call of Duty Ghosts Digital Hardened Edition, $89.99. That's like $110.
Or a 360, Wii U, PS4, and Xbox One cross launch game,
Yeah,
by the way.
like absolutely egregious. Actually, let's see how much Black Ops 3 costs. I want to do this live. I wanted to do this live last week, but um, I just couldn't. Black Ops 3. Let's see how much Black Ops 3 costs. Because like these need to go down in price. They really do. Okay, Call of Duty Black Ops 3 Zombies Chronicles Edition, $54.99. Like, and that game's like over 10 years old. Like, what were they thinking? And the other bundle you can get is the Call of Duty Black Ops 3 Zombies Chronicles Deluxe Edition. Nice. $79.99. Absolutely egregious. And they still doing this stuff. Hopefully, like just put the older things in Game Pass. We really don't need to, pay that price for old games. And like I buy old games all the time, don't get me wrong, but you can't be asking full price for a Call of Duty game that came out in 2013. You just can't. Anyway, Activision old games, they basically like Nintendo titles where the prices don't drop. Hopefully they change soon. Anyway, Logan, before we close out the show, have you got anything else to say?
No, just excited for the Xbox showcase next week. This should be a good week coming up, and yeah, just looking forward to stuff, man.
Yeah, it should be a good week. It's always been good doing the show with you, man. So yeah,
Absolutely.
everyone in chat has been amazing. No arguing or anything. It's all chill. I think it helps that it's been a very positive week when it comes to game news. But I like to say this is the best chat on the internet. We will be back for a new episode next week, which will be our big prediction show. And yeah, that's going to be a fun one. There should be some stuff that might leak next week, but if stuff does leak, I'll try not spoil it for people. Now I will say this: I should have a video coming out between now and the next live stream. Hopefully in the next few days. I have to finish editing the video. I think people will really like it. So if you're looking forward to upcoming games, got you covered. I will be live streaming the Xbox Showcase on, I think it's June 8th, where you can watch the show with me, much like last year and the year before, where I'll talk before the show and talk about it afterwards. Should be a fun time, and that will be going live either 1 hour or 30 minutes before Microsoft show. But again, I'll talk about that during next week's podcast. Anyway, hope everyone has a good day. Hope you check out my next video. The link to my previous video is in the description down below, and also the links to both of our social media channels in the description down below. Hope everyone has a good day. We're out, everybody. Peace.